Just ask you about those comments. You're basically saying, look, debt holders shouldn't assume guarantee.
Well, I'm taking a position, I'm restating a position I've stated for a long time. I think people kept talking about how there was an implicit guarantee for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and I think that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I kept saying there wasn't. By the way, a lot of shareholders of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were wiped out or substantially diminished. Now, Treasury did, and they pointed out to me on December 24th, they issued a statement about what they were going to do. I certainly support Treasury standing by what it said. So as of the December 24th statement, yes, Treasury said that they plan to do this, and we don't want anyone to doubt their word. But it's still not the same as a binding legal obligation of the federal government, and I don't think we should confuse that.
That's right. It's not binding. So, but do you really think that there's the slightest possibility that the U.S. government does not stand behind Fannie and Freddie, and they are actually in conservatorship?
Oh, I say this, particularly with the statement of December 24th, people who are putting money in now, yes, that should be protected. But people who, for instance, may have invested before the conservatorship, shareholders, and again, there are people out there who are shareholders. Well, they may be wondering why they got wiped out as they did. There was a diminution of what they had. I believe Treasury should have the ability to do what it thinks best, but it's because we want to protect the stability of the housing market. And I think we ought to have a very sharp line. A legal obligation of the U.S. government is here, and other things, they may be very secure, you may feel very good about them, but they're not the same as the legal obligation of the U.S. government. I do think that, by the way, what I believe we are going to do going forward is to get a whole new system of housing finance. We have a tangle that has been around for a long time. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, the Federal Housing Administration, the Federal Home Loan Banks. We have a mix of private and public. That worked for a while when housing prices were going up and up. When housing prices collapsed, it became clear that structurally that was flawed. Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming naked. Well, there's a lot of nudity going around in our financial housing finance, and we do plan, I plan to have hearings, I had to postpone them, to sort all this out. And going forward, I don't want anyone to assume that this is going to be debt of a certain level or not. I think we have to start from a fresh perspective.
Right, but doesn't this make this a much riskier situation right now? I mean, even for, the Fed's balance sheet, for example, is loaded with this stuff.
Well, the Fed's balance sheet, yeah, that's true. And I believe that Treasury has made it very clear that with particularly the stuff that they sold, and I guess you would have to distinguish between the period of the conservatorship forward. Once the federal government stepped in with the conservatorship, that was a pretty heavy promise by the federal government, which goes back 2 administrations. Remember, it was Secretary Paulson who promoted that conservatorship after it was a bipartisan thing. And when the Democrats took over Congress in 2007, no legislation had been passed. We responded to Secretary Paulson and gave him various regulatory powers, including conservatorship. But there may be paper from way back, years before that. I don't want anyone to think that that's 100% obligation of the federal government. So what happened since the conservatorship, yes, that's in a different category, because there were some explicit pledges made by the federal government.
So you said that there are options available for them, a whole range of options, and investors should not be surprised if they take a haircut. What are the options, sir?
Well, it's not useful to speculate in general about those because, as I said, people who bought from the conservatorship on are in a different category than people who had held paper before the conservatorship. And look, no one wants to reduce what people get. We want to be able to pay off people. But I do just want to state what I thought was pretty obvious, that if you bought from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, particularly before 2008 in the conservatorship, as I was saying consistently at that time, you were not buying treasuries. You were not buying 100% obligation. Now, from the conservatorship on, that was a different story. As of December 24th, when the federal Treasury made some very explicit statements, that's a different story. Beyond that, I don't think it's useful to speculate.
Now, do you think that the foreign central banks are going to feel differently about holding this paper after after today?
It depends on when they bought that paper. And by the way, you say holding it, who are they going to sell it to? Each other?
Well, just getting rid of it and getting rid of it in the market.
Well, no, that doesn't. I'm not afraid that it can't be that the paper is going to be devalued and they'll rush to get rid of it. I think that would make it less likely. And nobody's suggesting that it is devalued now. but I do think it's important to know what the legal differences are between U.S. Treasuries and not. Again, as I said, people who bought from the conservatorship on, that's a different story. Now, I do know it's been the view of the Bush Treasury and of the Obama Treasury, and you go back to the Clinton and previous Bush and Reagan Treasuries, they believed it was important to honor those commitments. That's a choice they are entitled to make. But we ought to be clear that that's not the same as a legal binding obligation of the federal government.